There is a place in America where the earth is a forbidden thing. In West Anniston, Alabama, the grass looks green, the soil looks rich. But if you were to walk barefoot across a backyard here, you aren't just touching dirt, you are stepping into a tomb of industrial secrets. For 40 years, the people here lived with a ghost. It was in the air they breathed. It was a fine, yellowish dust that settled on their dinner plates while they slept. It was in the fish they fried on Sunday afternoons. It was in the very blood of their children before they were even born. But the most terrifying thing about this story isn't the poison, it's the paper trail. Deep inside the vaults of the Monsanto Chemical Company, executives were reading reports that would make your skin crawl. They saw fish turning inside out in 10 seconds. They saw reports of liver failure and systemic toxicity. And then they did the unthinkable. They picked up their pens and wrote 4 words that would seal the fate of thousands. Read and then destroy. Why did a billion-dollar giant decide that a small, mostly black community in Alabama was a disposable price for progress? How do you keep a $700 million secret for 4 decades while people are dying across the street from your front gate? Today, as a YouTube coach and expert, I'm taking you behind the curtain of the most outrageous legal battle in American history. We are going beyond the headlines. We are opening the files they wanted burned. We are exploring the dark, hidden history of Monsanto's Anniston plant. If you think you know how corporate greed works, wait until you see what was in the water in 1966. This is the story of the town that fought back against a monster. The monster's cradle, the rise of the chemical monopoly. To understand the crime, you have to understand the criminal's origin. Our story begins in 1901 with a man named John Francis Queeny. He wasn't a scientist, he was a pharmaceutical middleman with $5,000 and a vision. He named his company after his wife's maiden name, Monsanto. In the beginning, they were the underdogs. They made saccharin because Germany had a monopoly on it. They made caffeine. They made aspirin. Their business model was identify the gap, fill the gap, scale the gap. But in 1929, they found something better than caffeine. They found a miracle. It was called aerochlor. To the world, they were known as PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls. Industrially, they were perfect. They didn't burn, they didn't conduct electricity, they were the liquid gold of the electrical age. Every transformer, every power line, every lubricant needed them. Monsanto bought the Anniston plant in 1935, and overnight they became the masters of the PCB universe. They owned 99% of the market. If you turned on a light in America between 1930 and 1970, a Monsanto chemical from Anniston likely made it possible. Anniston was a company town. The plant sat on 70 acres at the foot of Coldwater Mountain. For the residents, the plant was a godsend. It meant work. It meant a path out of the sharecropping poverty that had plagued the South for generations. But there was a dark side to this miracle. Even as early as 1937, just 2 years after Monsanto arrived, the warnings started screaming. Dr. Cecil Drinker of Harvard University conducted a study. He was blunt. These chemicals are definitively toxic. He warned that any industrial use required strict controls. Monsanto's reaction? They didn't change their safety protocols for the town. They didn't warn the workers. They hired Dr. Drinker as a consultant. They bought the science to bury the truth. And as the plant's lights burned 24/7, the chemicals began to seep into the very soul of West Anniston. The sacrifice zone, Jim Crow and the chemical divide. To tell the story of Anniston, you have to talk about race. In the 1940s and 50s, West Anniston was a world apart. This was the Jim Crow South. The streets were narrower, the houses were smaller, and the jobs were strictly divided by the color of your skin. Meet Rayfield Horton. He started in 1934. He was a janitor. In the hierarchy of Monsanto, black men were given the maintenance jobs. While white workers operated the machines from a distance, men like Rayfield were on their hands and knees cleaning the vats. They were the ones most directly exposed to the Aerochlor sludge. Rayfield didn't know he was cleaning a poison. He was just happy to have a paycheck that could buy a house. This is the part of the story that breaks your heart. Rayfield would come home and leave his boots on the porch. His grandchildren would put them on and play grown-up, stomping around the yard in boots covered in PCB residue. That residue wasn't just on the boots, it was in the creek. Snow Creek ran right through the black neighborhoods. Children swam in it, families caught catfish in it. Monsanto was dumping 250 pounds of raw PCBs into that creek every single day. They knew the fish were toxic. In 1966, they did a test. They put fish in the creek and watched them die in 10 seconds. Their skin literally fell off. But they never put up a sign. They never told the neighbors to stop fishing. Why? Because telling the truth would harm the image of Monsanto. They chose the image of the company over the lives of the people who cleaned their floors. The Ad Hoc Committee. The architecture of a lie. 1969 was a turning point. Globally, the secret was getting out. Scientists in Sweden were finding PCBs in the blubber of seals. The world was asking, what is this stuff? Inside Monsanto headquarters in St. Louis, they didn't scramble to fix the problem. They scrambled to fix the narrative. They formed a secret group, the Aerochlor Ad Hoc Committee. Their mission statement was written in their own internal memos. It wasn't, how do we clean the water? It was, how do we permit continued sales and profits while protecting our image? They knew PCBs were going to become a global environmental contaminant. They said it themselves. This is where the story turns into a thriller. Memos began circulating with the instructions, confidential, read, and then destroy. They were systematically trying to erase the evidence of their own awareness. They even manipulated their medical data. When their own animal studies showed tumors, the word tumors was magically deleted before the reports were sent to the government. While the executives were sitting in air-conditioned offices in St. Louis, David Baker's mother was wiping that yellow dust off her kitchen table in Anniston. She didn't know it was a neurotoxin. She thought it was just factory dust. For 40 years, the people of Anniston were living in a sacrifice zone. They were the unintended lab rats of the chemical age, and the most shocking part, the state of Alabama knew too. Memos show that state regulators were encouraged to handle the contamination quietly. They looked the other way while a quarter-ton of poison was dumped into the water supply every day. The reckoning, $700 million, and the verdict of outrage. The wall of silence didn't fall until 1993. A simple fish survey revealed the truth. The fish in Anniston were so toxic they were essentially hazardous waste. Suddenly, the lawyers arrived. The discovery process began. And that's when the read and destroy memos were found. They hadn't destroyed them all. In 2002, the trial of the century began in Anniston. 20,000 residents stood up against the giant. They didn't just want money. They wanted an admission of what had been done to them. The jury heard it all. They saw the read and destroy stamps. They saw the fish test from 1966. The jury returned a verdict that sent shockwaves through the corporate world. They found Monsanto liable for outrage. It is a rare legal finding. It means the company's conduct was so extreme and outrageous that it went beyond all bounds of decency. They settled for $700 million. But here is the reality of West Anniston today. You can't eat the fish. You can't touch the dirt.
Taylor Phillips became a doctor because she grew up in a world of illness. She carries PCBs in her blood today, chemicals deposited before she was even born. Monsanto's name is gone now, bought and retired by Bayer. But the soil in Anniston doesn't forget. The blood of the Horton family doesn't forget. This is the dark legacy of the chemical age, a story of a town that was sold for a profit margin. If you want to make sure stories like this never stay hidden again, hit that subscribe button, because the truth is the only thing they can't read and destroy.